Hey everybody, it's the end of January 2026, which means that it's just about time for Requests Month. I'm hoping that this year Request Month goes a lot better than last year's did, because last year's was just a complete mess. But regardless of what interferes or doesn't interfere with being able to produce videos, I do have the games I want to cover selected already. So for those of you who aren't really familiar with the Request Month stuff, every year I set aside the month of February to cover games that have either been requested directly by viewers or have been sent to me for reviewing. Now, if you're considering requesting something, then just understand that everything for this year's Request Month has already been decided. So if you're throwing a request at me, if it's not something I've already picked for this year's Request Month, then it would be something that might go into a request month later on down the line. Now, I should note that while I have selected a few particular games for review, that doesn't mean that's going to be all of the content throughout the month. I'll also be uploading a couple DW Plays videos, maybe a couple MTOs as well, some lighter content in between the bigger videos, if I can manage it, of course, because I'm hoping we don't end up with a repeat of last year's request month where I just ended up not having the time or energy to work on videos, and so I just kept ending up having to push projects later on down the line until eventually Request Month ended up just kind of being not a thing. This month I'm very much aiming at Request Month still being a thing, and there's some interesting games that I'll be covering for it, so stay tuned for all those. But the other big thing I've been doing with Request Month over the past several years is that I now have a yearly Q&A video, a questions and answers video, and I accept submissions for the yearly Q&A through the entirety of Request Month. So basically at the end of the month, on March 1st, I compile a list of the various questions that have been submitted for my Q&A, and then over the ensuing couple of weeks, I put together a video that answers those questions. So if you have a question you'd like me to answer for the Q&A video, it doesn't necessarily have to be about gaming, it can be about just about anything, really, then make sure you get your question submission in before March 1st. There are a few stipulations with these, however. The first is that when you go to submit a question, make sure it's not something like, what do you think about insert game here? Because that is a review request. That would get added to the list of review requests if it's not something that I've already got in that list anyway, and it would not get an answer slot in a Q&A. Another question type that I will not be answering is political questions. I'm sick of politics, you're sick of politics. Let's leave it at that. But apart from those types of questions, pretty much anything is fair game. I will let you know if it's not necessarily appropriate for a Q&A or if it's really more of a review request than something that I would actually answer in a Q&A, but generally speaking, if you have a question at all, feel free to ask it, and there's a very good chance that it will show up in the Q&A. And if you're somehow stumbling upon this announcement video more towards the end of the month and you miss the cutoff period, don't worry too much about it. Feel free to ask the question anyway, it's just that it won't be in this year's Q&A video. Instead, it'll potentially be in the next year's Q&A video. And just a quick note for anybody who does plan on submitting a question, if there's a particular name you would prefer that I use, or of course if you prefer to remain anonymous entirely, then go ahead and note that when you submit the question to me, and I will endeavor to use that name or lack of name in the case of the people who prefer to remain anonymous. And that about covers it. So for those of you who have questions for the Q&A, make sure you get those submissions in by March 1st, because that is the hard cutoff for when I'll be accepting questions for the 2026 Q&A, and anything that comes in from March 1st onwards will be for future Q&As. I hope you all enjoy the videos I've been planning out for Request Month, and I hope that the Request Month this year goes smoothly rather than the complete mess that it was last year. But time will tell on that. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all in later videos.